got into it, I just wanted to freak people out when I pull up at a stoplight. I just wanted people to dig my stuff, you know, and that was the whole reason I got into it. It started as a hobby, really, and I just picked those skills up because I couldn't afford to get anybody to do it for me.
While reality TV chased chaos, Joe Martin quietly built a legacy on integrity, refusing to fake drama, speed up builds, or sell out his shop for the spotlight. As networks pushed for conflict and faster content, he stood his ground, losing team members, but never his vision. In a world of noise, Martin's silence became his rebellion, and his authenticity changed the game forever. Before the glossy shop shots and polished builds aired to millions, Joe Martin was simply a guy with a welder, a vision, and zero interest in the spotlight. In the early 2000s, Martin had already established himself as a force in the custom motorcycle scene through Biker Buildoff, a gritty competition series that highlighted fabrication over flash. His motorcycles weren't just machines. They were metal poetry, featuring flowing lines, raw power, and finishes so clean they looked carved from shadow. Martin won not just the competition, but the admiration of serious builders across the country. However, he also witnessed the hidden cost of reality TV fame. Producers consistently pushed for bigger personalities, quicker turnarounds, and more dramatic television moments. Many participants were more interested in camera time than craftsmanship, and Martin took careful notes about what he would and wouldn't accept if television came calling again. Years later, when Velocity Network, later Motor Trend, approached Martin with a new show concept, he hesitated. The producers promised something different this time. A shop in the Texas Hill Country, a team of real builders instead of actors, and programming focused on process rather than personalities. Martin agreed, but with one non-negotiable condition: no staged drama. This decision shaped everything about Iron Resurrection. Martin brought his wife Mandy into the project not as a storyline device, but because she already managed the business operations of their shop. Her presence wasn't scripted. It was earned through years of running Martin Brothers Customs. Alongside trusted crew members like Shag, Shorty, and Kato, Iron Resurrection was born with an unusual foundation: authenticity. The show delivered something rare in automotive television. The builds were genuine, the timelines reflected actual restoration work, and the tension emerged from the steel itself: rusted, bent, and challenging to transform. What followed was programming that didn't insult its audience's intelligence. There was no yelling, no artificial clock-beating chaos, just calm, confident fabrication executed by people who genuinely knew their craft. But maintaining this authentic approach in reality TV came with significant battles behind the scenes. As Iron Resurrection gained a loyal fan base, producers began applying familiar pressure tactics. They pushed for more content, faster editing schedules, and what they called spicier moments. The network wanted storylines, interpersonal conflict, accelerated timelines, and emotional narrative arcs that could drive viewer engagement metrics. Martin's response was characteristically direct. He refused every compromise. He didn't speed up builds to accommodate shooting schedules. He didn't manufacture arguments to fill airtime. His rule was simple: the build was the star, not the builder. If the restoration work wasn't completed properly, the cameras waited. If authentic drama didn't naturally occur, it didn't make it to television. This philosophy created mounting tension, not within Martin's crew, but between production expectations and his quiet resistance. The pressure eventually took its toll on the team. Shorty, the fan-favorite painter known for his exceptional finishing work, stepped away from the show. Kato, the trusted metal fabrication specialist, also departed. Neither departure included official explanations, farewell episodes, or public statements. They were simply gone. Fans immediately began speculating about the behind-the-scenes dynamics. Some theorized about contract disputes, while others suspected creative differences or burnout from the demanding production schedule. A few believed producers had pressured Martin to replace cast members with more television-friendly personalities, something Martin quietly refused to consider. However, those familiar with Martin's character understood these weren't dramatic falling outs. The departures likely reflected personal decisions related to family priorities, health considerations, or simply life's evolving circumstances. Martin, demonstrating his consistent respect for privacy, never turned these professional changes into media spectacles. Instead, he adapted the shop's energy, continued the builds, and honored departing team members by maintaining the same craftsmanship standards that originally earned their fan loyalty. While other automotive content creators embraced social media saturation, Martin took a radically different approach. He avoided daily YouTube uploads, flashy Instagram content, live-streamed builds, and viral trend participation. His content strategy was deliberately slow, intentional, and focused. He appeared when he had something meaningful to contribute, then returned to his primary work, shaping steel. This approach resonated with audiences seeking substance over spectacle. Martin's viewers understood they weren't watching manufactured drama. They were observing genuine craftsmanship, learning restoration techniques, and appreciating authentic skill development. In an industry increasingly dominated by clickbait content and compressed attention spans, Martin's methodical approach felt revolutionary. The cost of maintaining integrity in reality television became increasingly apparent as Iron Resurrection continued. While other automotive shows secured major sponsorship deals, cross-promotional opportunities, and national marketing campaigns, Martin's program followed a notably quieter path. It didn't receive primetime placement, wasn't loaded with commercial tie-ins, and certainly didn't produce seasons on accelerated schedules. Martin deliberately rejected opportunities that would have significantly increased his income. He turned down merchandise licensing deals, branded product endorsements, and paid appearance opportunities that other television personalities readily accepted. To Martin, monetizing his reputation beyond his actual work would have represented a fundamental betrayal of his craft and his audience. Martin Brothers Customs remained exactly what it had always been, a working garage filled with genuine respect for metal fabrication, rather than transforming into a tourist attraction or flashy retail storefront. This decision came with financial consequences, but Martin prioritized long-term authenticity over short-term profit maximization. The mystery surrounding Shorty and Kato's departures highlighted Martin's approach to privacy and professional relationships. Fans never received farewell episodes, official statements from the network, or detailed explanations about the personnel changes. The absence of information naturally generated theories. Some fans suspected contract negotiations had failed, others believed behind-the-scenes tension had developed, and some thought producers had demanded cast changes Martin wouldn't support. Martin's response to speculation was consistent with his overall media philosophy: complete silence. He didn't address rumors, pursue interviews to clarify situations, or engage with critics questioning the show's direction. His approach demonstrated that not everything has to be explained publicly, especially when those explanations might compromise other people's privacy or dignity. This silent strategy extended to Martin's broader media presence. In an era where oversharing functions as social currency, Martin's commitment to privacy became one of his most powerful professional statements. Networks sometimes hesitate to promote personalities who won't participate in traditional publicity activities, and social media growth typically stalls without constant engagement. However, Martin's following deepened rather than expanded, attracting viewers specifically seeking inspiration over entertainment drama. Mandy Martin's role deserves particular recognition in understanding Iron Resurrection's success. From the first episode, Mandy operated as the business spine of the operation. While cameras focused on fabrication work, Mandy managed financial operations, sourced parts, negotiated supplier relationships, and maintained the operational systems that kept Martin Brothers Customs functional. Rather than being positioned as a supporting character or relationship storyline, Mandy carved out her professional space with calm precision. She didn't participate in artificial conflicts, pose for dramatic shots, or transform her business role into television content. Martin's influence on the broader automotive fabrication community extends far beyond television ratings. Serious fabricators and custom car enthusiasts reference his work when discussing quality standards and professional approaches. His approach represents blue-collar mentorship at its finest, teaching through demonstration rather than instruction, inspiring through consistent quality rather than motivational speeches. Martin's legacy proves that longevity beats popularity in building sustainable professional respect. He didn't pursue influencer status, chase viral content, or monetize every aspect of his expertise. Instead, he built his reputation one weld, one restoration, one perfectly shaped curve at a time. He was the face of speed on the big screen, but what Paul Walker left behind in real life stunned even his closest friends. When he died in 2013, the world mourned the actor who brought Brian O'Connor to life in The Fast and the Furious. But behind the Hollywood image was a hidden world, a garage that told a story more complex, more human, and far more emotional than anyone could have imagined. To fans, Paul Walker was the embodiment of cool, a street racing legend, the undercover cop with a good heart. But in private, Paul was a builder, a collector, and a quiet philanthropist. He didn't just act in car movies, he lived the culture. His passion wasn't performative, it was real, raw, and deeply personal. He wasn't interested in using his fame for status. Paul could have easily flaunted his cars, leveraged social media for attention, or turned his garage into a public display. But he didn't. Instead, he kept it sacred, a quiet retreat where the only applause came from the roar of engines and the hum of ongoing builds. Few knew the full extent of Paul's car obsession. Hidden in an industrial garage in Valencia, California, he had amassed a stunning collection, over 30 ultra-rare vehicles, many of them never seen in public. This wasn't a showroom for Instagram likes. It was a sanctuary filled with raw projects, rare imports, and muscle car legends. Some of the vehicles were stripped to the frame, mid-restoration. Others were pristine and untouched. Each car told a story of races, road trips, late-night tuning sessions, and dreams yet to be realized. His garage wasn't just a place, it was a portrait of Paul's soul. Sorting the cars wasn't easy. Many weren't in Paul's name. Titles were split. Some vehicles registered under Always Evolving, a performance company he co-founded with friend Roger Rodas, who died with him in the fatal crash. This complicated ownership and sparked legal disputes. Was the garage a personal collection or business inventory? With millions at stake, lawyers descended. The layers of ownership were tangled in overlapping claims. Some cars had been partially financed through shop credit, others earmarked for future sale or charity events that never materialized. The web of documents and verbal agreements turned a personal garage into a complex puzzle for estate lawyers. Inside were legends: a 1995 BMW M3 Lightweight, a Celine S7, multiple Ford GTs, Porsche 911S, and a Toyota Supra Turbo, a nod to his Fast and Furious roots. But the crown jewels were his Nissan Skyline GTRs, including R32 and R34 models. Some legal, some not. Handwritten tuning notes were found in glove compartments. Some cars had been modified by Paul himself. This wasn't a rich man's toy chest. It was a workshop of obsession. Among the most eye-catching finds were 5 BMW M3 lightweights, vehicles that were never officially offered with radio, air conditioning, or luxury trim. Each one was a track-focused weapon. Paul had acquired them not for profit, but for preservation. It wasn't about showing off, it was about saving a piece of automotive history. Many of his cars were brought in under show and display exemptions, legal gray areas that allowed limited use but barred them from full registration. At least one Skyline had paperwork so murky it may not have passed U.S. compliance standards. But Paul didn't care. These were machines built for feeling, not resale. Insiders confirmed he worked closely with importers and compliance experts, even helping to fund legal efforts to make these dream cars street legal. It wasn't just for him. He wanted the community to benefit. He knew the risk. But passion overruled caution. What stunned his family most were the handwritten notes. Tucked into consoles and dashboards, they revealed how Paul connected with each car. One note in an R34 read, "This one's for Meadow. She'll drive it one day." Others were logs, tune settings, or reminders like, "Don't ever flip it." Some notes were barely legible, scribbled in haste on gas receipts or sticky pads. One had a list of future mods, another just a single word: perfect. Each note added dimension to the man behind the wheel. They weren't blueprints for a public museum. They were messages to himself, and perhaps one day, to his daughter. Several builds were mid-project, a 240Z believed to be his next personal driver, a Boss Mustang for charity, a classic muscle car for a friend, unfinished dreams, frozen in time. Tools still lay beside stripped shells. Blue tape listed to-dos across dashboards. These weren't investments. They were passions he never got to finish. Walking through the garage was like stepping into a Paul's film. Paul's presence lingered in the details, the favorite tools, engine stands, and the grease-stained gloves left beside an open hood. Friends reported that seeing those Paul's projects was one of the hardest moments in mourning. They represented not just his skill, but his unfinished plans. Even more shocking, some cars were labeled for Reach Out Worldwide, the disaster relief nonprofit Paul founded. He had earmarked them for future auctions, quiet plans to fund aid efforts through horsepower. A modified Supra and Boss 302 Mustang were tagged for events that never happened. It proved Paul's legacy wasn't just cinematic, it was humanitarian. There were full plans for a charity gala that were never executed. Scripts, event outlines, donation targets, all filed away near the auction-bound vehicles. He had dreams not just of showing these cars, but using them to spark change, to rebuild homes, to fly supplies to those who needed it most. His garage was a warehouse of hope. After the garage was opened, the chaos began. Disputes over ownership, lawsuits, cars without titles, creditors appearing. Even friends and former associates made claims. Eventually, 21 cars were sold at auction, bringing in over $2.3 million. But not all were sold. Some were kept quietly by those who loved him. For the estate, it was more than a challenge. It was a burden. Paul never intended for the garage to be picked apart, but without a will detailing each car's ownership or purpose, courts had to decide. It became a legal chessboard with million-dollar pieces. For Meadow Walker, Paul's daughter and heir, the process wasn't financial. It was personal. Every car held a memory. Every note, a piece of her father's voice. For her, this wasn't an estate. It was her dad's heart, shelled in steel. Meadow, who was just 15 when Paul died, reportedly walked through the garage with quiet reverence. She didn't rush. She wanted to understand what her father had built, what he loved. It wasn't about valuations. It was about reconnection. What they found in Paul Walker's garage wasn't just a collection of cars. It was a map of who he truly was. A man who lived simply, loved deeply, and gave quietly. He didn't want recognition. He wanted connection. In every weld, every sticky note, every half-finished project, he left a message. This was real. Paul Walker didn't collect cars for fame. He built them, lived them, and intended them for something bigger. And now, long after his final ride, that legacy continues to move us all. And perhaps that's the most enduring part of this story. Paul never meant for his garage to be discovered in this way. He didn't prepare it for public eyes. But in doing so, in accidentally revealing his private world, he left behind something more powerful than any movie role. A quiet, undeniable truth that even off-camera, he was exactly who we hoped he was. He wasn't just Brian O'Connor. He was Paul Walker, the real deal, a man who raced, built, gave, and loved with all his heart. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because we're just getting started uncovering the real lives behind the legends.
Stephen Miller's wife is finally breaking her silence.
Stephen Miller, a name synonymous with cruelty, extremism, and some of the darkest chapters of modern American politics. He wasn't just a Trump advisor, he was the architect of the administration's harshest, most draconian immigration policies. But now, Miller is facing a public reckoning, and it's coming from the most unexpected place, his own home. This is the story of how Stephen Miller, the man who once stood at the pinnacle of power, is now being dragged into the mud, not by political opponents, but by the cracks forming in his own world. From ICE raids and legal battles to personal betrayals and explosive rumors involving Elon Musk, this is a scandal unraveling at every level. And it's time to break it all down. Stephen Miller built his reputation on policies designed to shock and terrify. From the Muslim Los Aban to family separations at the border, he engineered cruelty into law. He turned ICE into a militarized machine, descending on cities with masked agents and armored vehicles. Los Angeles became one of the first battlegrounds, where communities were invaded under the guise of law and order. But as masked ICE squads stormed peaceful protests and terrified immigrant neighborhoods, the media largely looked the other way. Those who did speak out were often silenced or dismissed. Meanwhile, Miller's influence only grew. This was never just immigration enforcement. It was an ideological war. Miller and Trump painted Los Angeles as a battlefield, claiming the city was overrun by criminals and aliens, that it needed to be liberated. The reality? Nearly 34% of LA County is foreign-born. The so-called liberation was an attack on the residents themselves.
Or even about an hour ago, he said that we have been invaded by criminals and aliens and that he wants to liberate the city of Los Angeles. That kind of language inflames tensions, makes things worse. When he has people that show up not in normal ICE uniforms that they used to wear to, do a raid or do different things, but in kind of militarized uniforms, then that's what kind of sparks the increased tension. So we know that he's been planning on this for a while. They want this showdown between us, California, because they don't like what we represent. LA County alone is 34% foreign born, 34%. So when he says they're going to liberate us, who is he going to liberate us from? Ourselves? So one of the things we want to do is to make sure that people know that it's Donald Trump who's actually making the situation worse.